What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video, trying to give you guys as much content as I can. And I wanted to talk about the minor roster move that the New York Giants made yesterday and jump into the prospect, get to know him a little bit more, but also talk about how I feel about this New York Giants backfield right now and some of the hints that Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman may be letting out about Saquon Barkley, and whether or not the New York Giants may have more of a running back by committee approach than some of us may have initially anticipated. Of course, Saquon Barkley coming off the injury, I still think he's going to be good to go. I think he's going to start the season, but the question is, how big of a role will Barkley have coming off the ACL tear? Will he be 100%? A lot of people feel like it takes a year, sometimes two, to fully recover from that injury, and we all know that Barkley relies on a lot of cuts. And I think the New York Giants may be hinting that they at least want some insurance headed into training camp with all the moves that they've made. And of course, the New York Giants yesterday claimed Ryquell Armstead off of waivers, a former running back out of Temple, spent 1 year with Jacksonville. We're going to get into all of his numbers. A former fifth-round pick out of Temple. Didn't play all of last year because he actually really suffered due to COVID, and we're going to get into all the specifics with that, but it's why he had to sit out last season when he was just entering his second year, a year in which a lot of people felt that Armstead may have been the favorite to be the starting running back going into his sophomore season with the Jaguars. Well, it turns out that James Robinson took the role. He ran with it. In addition to that, they brought in Carlos Hyde, and they drafted Travis Etienne this year in the first round, which made Armstead expendable, and it allowed the New York Giants to go out there and claim him. By doing this, the New York Giants did waive Joe Webb, a kind of a hybrid wide receiver quarterback prospect that the Giants brought in late in the season last year. But Armstead will join this running back group. And when you look at what the Giants have done, they drafted Brightwell in the 6th round. Then they go out there, they sign Clement, and now they bring in Ryquell Armstead. And before that, they signed Devontae Booker to a 2-year contract. And all of a sudden, you have a crowded backfield. And it begs the question, at least in my opinion, are the New York Giants going to go with a lot more of a running back by committee approach than we initially anticipated? And when I say that, no. Do I think it'll be an even distribution? Absolutely not. Saquon Barkley is still our best playmaker, but maybe the Giants are going to ease him back, and sometimes less is more. I want to credit Authentic for this. He's brought up the fact that maybe they'll use him in a Alvin Kamara type role where he won't be a bell cow running back. The thing that I like about Armstead is he's a tough north-south runner when you watch him run. I actually watched a couple of interviews with him, and this guy is all about putting his head down and getting those tough yards. And I think it's a nice addition to this New York Giants backfield if he indeed could crack the roster. And he's still very young and maybe fills that Wayne Gallman-like vacancy. We'll have to wait and see how he does in training camp. Now, he lost 20 pounds after getting the virus last year. He was 220 pounds going into his sophomore year. He's now down to 200. So he'll have to bulk up before the year starts. He stands at 5'11", 200 pounds. But by the time the season starts, I expect him to be closer to that 220 mark. But let's jump into some of the things about Armstead. Let's get to know him a little bit better. Got this off GiantsWire.com. The 5'11", 200-pound Armstead was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list in August of last year, activated nearly 3 weeks later, and then placed back on the list in September. He was hospitalized twice throughout the season with significant respiratory issues as a result of his coronavirus battle. So I think it's a really good comeback story, and hopefully he's completely healthy. And later on, his agent went out to talk about his clean bill of health. He has a 100% clean bill of health from multiple doctors. Jeremy, however you say his name, Armstead's agent said at EMG Sports, told the New York Daily News. He's been cleared of any COVID-related symptoms. He's ready to get to work with the Giants. And as Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman have said, they want as many good players as they could possibly get. They don't care how deep that room is. Well, suddenly, a position that I was on board with drafting later in this year's draft because I thought we needed an RB3, well, suddenly we have a crowded running back room, much like we have a crowded tight end room, much like we have a crowded wide receiver room. And there's going to be a lot of competition going into training camp, and I think that's great. I think that only adds to the competition. I think it only adds to these players coming in hungry to produce as best as they can for this New York Giants football team. The one thing I want to make note of is Joe Judge comes from the Bill Belichick School of Thought. And Joe Judge was not here when the New York Giants initially drafted Saquon Barkley. Well, Bill Belichick, throughout his entire career, has been known to come with the running back by committee approach. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not Saquon Barkley will be a bell cow running back this year for the New York Giants. I think some signs are at least pointing to that he may not. I still think he's going to get the bulk of the carries, but maybe the Giants are using this as insurance, or maybe they plan to use their running backs a little bit more than we expected them to going into the 2020 season, being that Saquon Barkley is coming off of that ACL injury. These are his stats while at Jacksonville in the only year that he played, and they're underwhelming. Like I said, he's a north-south runner, so a lot of these may have been in third and short situations, goal line situations, even though he didn't have any touchdowns, so I doubt that was the case. He had 35 carries for 108 yards for only 3.1 yards a carry. He did display the ability to catch the football. He had 14 catches for 144 yards, but that was not known as a strength of his while he was at Temple. Going to pull up some of the notes on Armstead that I got off NFL.com. Face-first runner who doesn't appear to care that brakes come standard with the vehicle. Armstead's feet fire like pistons from the beginning of the snap all the way through his physical finishes. While he's not classically elusive, he does find his own yards by slithering through tight quarters or stacking yards after contact. His size, decisiveness, and effort in pass protection should land him work as a backup, but his play traits could help him find more carries than expected as a pro. So that's good to hear, that the book on him, at least coming into the pros, was the fact that he's good in pass protection. We need guys that could block, especially at that running back position. You know, a lot of Giants fans talked about last year that they didn't like that from Saquon Barkley. Well, maybe he could find a role in this team as a short yardage running back and a guy that could help in pass protection situations. These were his strengths. Good size, NFL thickness through his thighs. Known for competitive nature. Decisive and fearless. Downhill locomotive with ability after the rush with tapping the brakes. And you're going to, all the strengths are going to continue to say that he's a very hard-nosed running back. He's not a guy that's going to break big plays. He's a guy that you're going to use in third and short situations. Now, some of the cons to him, and the one that I'm really going to highlight, is that he doesn't necessarily wait for his blockers. Could stand to run with better patience and rhythm. Aggressive nature leads to immediate gas into traffic. Needs to take a breath and allow blocking in front of him to develop. So it's kind of the same notes over and over and over again. Could use more patience to his game. But, Armstead to me is probably going to be a camp body with a strong possibility of potentially cracking this roster. I think him and Clement bring a different skill set, and a lot of people talked about Brightwell, that the main reason why the Giants may have brought him in the first place was for special teams purposes. He was known to be very strong in that area well at college. I do think Armstead actually stands a pretty good chance if he is fully recovered. Like I said, you're talking about a guy that was at least supposed to be an even share distribution going into next year with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he's going to provide depth, at least at a bare minimum for the New York Giants at the running back position. The biggest question I have is, how are they going to distribute these carries this year? And do the New York Giants feel confident that Saquon Barkley will be 100% when the year starts? We're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out, but if there's anybody that will be ready to go, I believe in Saquon Barkley. The guy is built like an animal, and the guy, I am sure, is doing everything he can to be in the best shape possible before the year starts. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.